the sunlit world of what he believes to be reality. But there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
Que onda, Scarific supporters across the globe? You got Jaime En Fuego here for the horror show and more of my October specialty coverage of the entire Tales from the Darkside series. Now, this all began because of the fact that last year in 2015 for Enfuegotainment, I covered the entire Tales from the Crypt series. That's right, all 93 episodes of the HBO original. Awesome series. It was so great getting to relive a bit of anthology awesomeness that I watched as a kid and to see it through my adult eyes. And those EC comics that were originally published in the 50s that inspired Tales from the Crypt, well, George Romero, he read those as well. And he did Creepshow in the early 80s, and then after that anthology film took off and it was so popular, the one that he collaborated on with Stephen King, he was like, man, I'm really getting the itch to do more anthology horror, but he was thinking TV, and so a syndicated series called Tales from the Darkside was created. I mean, just from the name alone, you could tell where the inspiration was coming from, and so what I've been doing is covering, just like I did with Tales from the Crypt last year, 3 episodes a day, and I'm a little backlogged at the moment, but we are getting there, guys. You are eventually going to see all of these, and so this is the 6th installment. That's right, the 666th installment of my coverage of this program. We are nearing the end of the first season, and so this is going to cover episode 15, 16, and 17 of the first season of this, hey, it was a fairly celebrated, although being fairly low budget, and, the episodes are kind of hit and miss, and so that's why, just like with Tales from the Crypt, I am continuing the same approach that I do on my personal channel, which is called Enfuegotainment, where I choose a Bueno, a Malo, and a Feo. So if we're going to do the little Spanish tropes that I love so much, it's a good, a bad, and an ugly, and I choose to give that distinction to one of each of these 3 episodes. So jumping right into the inaugural one, and honestly, it's one that I did not think was going to get the good distinction. And until things got a little more twisty-turvy near the end, as is often the case in any anthology horror, whether it's Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, later on stuff like Masters of Horror, Monsters, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, whatever the hell it may be. There is often that little twisty pants going down, and so the twist didn't save this episode for me, it actually just validated it and made an intriguing episode that much cooler. And so this one is entitled The Madness Room, and you've got Stuart Whitman starring as this slightly older guy who has a younger hotsy-totsy wife. Yes, this is a premise we have seen in tons of EC comics and tons of Tales from the Crypt, or, the Vault of Horror, Haunt of Fear, Shock Suspense stories, whatever those EC titles might have been that Gaines did so many of before the comic code came in and totally disrupted his process. This episode feels the most to me like it was picked directly from those books. Now, the thing about Tales from the Darkside is that it is original stories, or, sometimes they did some like Stephen King, Clive Barker, Robert Bloch, I always mispronounce his name, adaptations, whereas the Tales from the Crypt stuff on that HBO series that we saw was all adapted from those original comics. And so this story, like I said, feels the most like it could have been in EC back in those original days. And you have a total, old drive-in, grindhouse, schlocky gore master directing this, John Hayes, who did titles like Grave of the Vampire and Garden of the Dead. He's the one who's actually behind the lens for this one, and I think his touch is perfect. Being an older guy who worked in those 60s and 70s, just, grindy, drive-in, sliminess, it's not a gory episode. It's not an episode that, particularly has a lot of violence or brutality or anything like that, but it's that interesting, just relational kind of, is something spooky going on? Is everything okay between this couple? And so that older man Whitman, who I mentioned earlier, the actor who's been in 200 plus different things, he is a recognizable face, even for me. I know he's been in films with John Wayne and various others, but yeah, his wife is big time into Ouija boards. She has this younger gentleman come over to help her and her husband try to see if there is in fact this mysterious madness room in this property that they have purchased, and so she's like messing with the Ouija board, and then they find this area of the wall that can be broken through to find a room that supposedly has not been touched for like 100 years, and so it's an interesting dynamic. It builds good tension, I must admit, and the climax is where this really shines, and unfortunately this is one where, beyond the premise of wondering are supernatural things going on, what is the twist gonna be, I'm not gonna say whether it's of the people or of, you know, some ghosts or whatever, or a little bit of both, but hey, this was a fantastic episode. It was truly deserving of the Bueno distinction, and just them searching through this room and just learning about all of the history involved, very cool, very intriguing, and hey, as I said, easily the Bueno episode of these particular proceedings. So next up we have the MALO episode. That's right, the bad episode. It's always tough when you have to give this distinction when you don't think it's completely deserving, but hey, when you're covering 3 episodes at a time, you have to choose something. This is one that I really liked until the ending. And it's called the Tear Collector, or Tear Collector offhand as I record this. I cannot recall specifically, but hey, that's just a little article at the beginning. But you have Jessica Harper starring in this, who everybody knows from Dario Argento's Suspiria, and then she was also in a pretty damn good Tales from the Crypt episode called My Brother's Keeper, where she starts up a little romance type thing with a Siamese twin who, you know, they're joined together and she likes one of them, and, you know, obviously with Siamese twins, there's a good one and a bad one, and so that was cool. And she's this lady who just cries her eyes out constantly. She can't figure out why, since a child, she's been so overwrought with emotion, so constantly prone to cry and just be, I don't know, a little wimpy baby in a lot of ways. And, you know, she's very weak, she's very susceptible, as you see in one particular scene where she's walking down you know, the street in her city, and this bum just like harasses her, lays his hands upon her, and is like shaking her, begging for money, and she is at his mercy practically. It's really sad, and you feel for this character in her performance, and you really you wonder, what is the problem? Is there a backstory, something in particular? We don't get any of that. There's no explanation really for why she is the way she is. It's just kind of assumed that that's the way she's wired. But abruptly she meets Dr. Martin Stein from Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. Yeah, that's right, an actor who has been in over 100 different movies. Mr. Victor Garber, who has been in everything from those aforementioned television series currently to everything from Sleepless in Seattle to Titanic, man. It's like, the guy is a recognizable face, one that I immediately noticed, and, you know, I was like, hey, I've seen that guy before, even if he was a lot younger and he's just got the one little gray streak going down. But he's a very shady and strange tear collector, hence the title of the story. And you think initially he's maybe trying to romance her character, but then there's the slightly more mischievous intentions. But without spoiling too much, you're just kind of wondering, you know, how bad is this guy? What exactly is he trying to do? And, you know, performances were good, but the ending to this is what made it the bad one. I was really ready for a twist that didn't really transpire, I guess, and this is where I'm really just kind of straddling the line, because if I really could talk about this episode the way that I want to, I would say how I feel about the twist, or, you know, the lack thereof, or just the minimalist aspect of it. But yeah, I feel like Tear Collector kind of squandered a pretty cool concept, so I'm not going to speak beyond that. We are immediately going to jump into the feo, that's right, the ugly, my friends, and that last episode that gets that distinction, which was actually the first one that I watched, is called Answer Me, and it has Jean Marsh, who's a top-notch thespian that was in The Changeling, where she was the spouse of George C. Scott, but she was also more recognizable to somebody like me. She was the bad Bizzle in Willow, man. Yeah, that's right, that crazy witch queen. I don't know what you would describe her as, but yeah, the big bad in Willow, not the guy with the skull mask, the lady who was basically leading him on. And then, if anybody has seen Return to Oz and not been tormented as a child witnessing that film about Princess Mombi and the various heads and stuff, it was the head that stuck on for, you know, most of the dastardly doings that were going on. And so she is, ironically enough, an actress playing an actress, and she is in this $600 a month apartment of sorts, where she keeps like constantly mentioning what she's paying for this place. I'm assuming she's just recently relocated to, you know, her new American dwellings, because she's got that thick accent, you know, and it is enchanting, and she's actually slightly lovely in that, older, alluring sort of way, and she's talking about how, I've got a 9 a.m. audition, I've got this, I've got that, and yet what is distracting her from getting her beauty rest, the type of thing that's going to put those little dark circles under her eyes and mess up the audition, is the fact that a phone keeps constantly ringing in the apartment right next to her, right? And so it rings maybe 50, 60 times, and she's going crazy, banging on the wall, trying to get somebody to answer it, and nobody's answering it. It's the weirdest thing. And so she ends up calling the landlord of the complex and is like, hey, what's going on? This is really weird. I'm getting very frustrated. Is the person on vacation or, whatever? And they're like, oh, he's lived there for a while. And it's it was a British woman who took her own life there. And that's where you start kind of scratching your head and you're like, what is really going on here? And so that's why it got the ugly distinction, because of the fact that it's basically her carrying this entire thing. She interacts with nobody else, with the exception of that one phone call. And I don't even think, if I remember, you hear a voice on the other line. So it's really self-contained. It shows the ugly strengths of this woman maybe descending into madness, just a wee bit, carrying everything. Richard Friedman is directing again, and he did 4 different Tales from the Darkside episodes, so he was a constant collaborator of Mr. Romero for this program and syndication. And then you've also got Michael McDowell, and Michael McDowell worked on various, Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Darkside episodes. Earlier here in the first season, he did Inside the Closet, directed by Tom Savini, which was a cool little creature tale. And then the Word Processor of the Gods, the one that was adapted from that Stephen King short story from Skeleton Crew. And so beyond that, he also did my favorite episode of the first season of Tales from the Crypt, wrote Lover, Come Hack to Me, which was bloody and super cool. And yeah, so this episode is ugly for that sheer fact that you've got a twist that was unexpected, and there is just an eerie, ugly concept of the pursuit of fame, the descent into madness when anything that could potentially be a roadblock comes into play. And there is an eerie ugliness too, just about some of the foreshadowing and whatnot. So I actually really recommend this episode to watch. And hey, even the second one, the MALO one, Tear Collector, was not that bad. So hey, for the last 2 episodes, guys, of this full series, Tales from the Darkside coverage, I actually fairly enjoyed all 3 episodes. Yeah, 2 in a row. Who knows if that trend is going to continue, but hey, it was at least reassuring to find 3 episodes that were intriguing, well written, and actually, despite certain reservations that I had in some of the scripting in a couple of the episodes, I actually was very impressed with the acting throughout. So I gotta extend a grande gracias to all of the Fright fans that are still tuning into this Tales from the Darkside coverage here in the month of October that I'm putting together about the entire series for the horror show. Please like, share, subscribe, show that love, do your thing, and all the support is greatly appreciated as we are upping our output here in the month of October. We're doing between 2 and 3 episodes a day, depending on how quickly we can get everything edited. We've got trailer reactions, film reviews, convention coverage that we recently did at King Halloween, the Fangoria FearCon, lots of other, throwback episodes as well, Throwback Thursday, Flashback Friday, so there's lots of fun stuff for you to sink your bloody teeth into. And then, I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find me covering cinema of the scarific variety and the nerdtastic variety on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where I have my own channel, which is definitely a side project compared to everything that I do here. But there's all kinds of older fun that you can check there, including all of those old Tales from the Crypt episodes if you guys so see fit. So once again, I extend that grande gracias.
And remind all of you that the dark side is always there, waiting for us to enter, waiting to enter us. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight. And until next time, remember, stay scared.